From the All Indiana Podcast Network.
It's time for real conversation about the real issues that affect our communities.
Poverty, education, equality, and more.
This is Real Talk.
Real Talk with Reverend Charles Harrison.
Welcome to Real Talk on the All Indiana Podcast Network. This is Reverend Charles Harrison, and on today's episode, I'm going to talk about a Newsweek article I just read today on whether Kamala Harris is in trouble with black men in America in her campaign.
Worried about letting someone else pick out the perfect avocado for your perfect impress-them-on-the-third-date guacamole? Well, good thing Instacart shoppers are as picky as you are. They find ripe avocados like it's their guac on the line. They are milk expiration date detectives. They bag eggs like the 12 precious pieces of cargo they are. So let Instacart shoppers overthink your groceries so that you can overthink what you'll wear on that third date. Download the Instacart app today to get free delivery on your first 3 orders, while supplies last. Minimum $10 per order. Additional terms apply.
Credit Karma is your evolved financial assistant, making managing your finances simpler and more tailored to you. Join us at creditkarma.com to start your personalized financial journey today and continue to grow with our innovations. Credit Karma. Evolve your finances.
Welcome to Real Talk on the All Indiana Podcast Network, and I am Reverend Charles Harrison, and this is my podcast, and every week I try to deal with current issues that are affecting either the city of Indianapolis, which is where I live, or something that impacts the country nationally. And I like to, be really open about how I see things. You know, I am a pastor in the city of Indianapolis. I pastor Barnes United Methodist Church. Most people know me as the leader of the Indianapolis 10-Point Coalition, which is a faith-based organization that addresses the issue of urban youth violence. Some say I'm very controversial because I am not afraid to speak the truth and to say what some are not willing to say in the black community. I am what you would consider a black moderate, been a moderate Democrat all of my life. But I'm not always happy with the party that I am a part of, and certainly when it comes to issues that impact the African American community. I have, been outspoken recently, really concerning concerns that I have, and many of those concerns, and I've gotten some pushback in the black community and others, about my position when it comes to black men, and particularly black men and the Democratic Party. I have been saying for a while that I felt like black men were beginning to move away from the Democratic Party. I had my reasons for saying that. I felt like that a couple things were going on. One is I felt like that the black vote had been taken for granted, that Democrats knew that they had the vote of black Americans and that they were not always focused on the agenda of black America. They knew they had our vote. And then on the other side, the Republican Party, they basically ignored black America. So we had one party that took our vote for granted, the other party that basically ignored us unless they felt like they needed our vote. I read an article, in Newsweek, and I really was fascinated by the article that I just read. The article was Kamala Harris in deep trouble with black men. Well, that immediately got my attention because I've been saying for a while that I thought that Democrats were in trouble with black men. I am a black man. I'm over 50 though. My perception is certainly different from those younger black men who are under the age of 50. But yet I felt like my analysis was right on target when it came to what I felt like was going on in the black community, and particularly politically. Ever since I can remember, and when I started voting at 18 years old, 90% of black people were voting Democrat. It didn't matter who the candidate was, didn't matter the color of the candidate, as long as they were Democrat. Sometimes it really didn't matter what the issues were that black America was facing. If the person was a Democrat, then they got our vote. So when I seen the headline of this article in Newsweek, and I started reading the story, Kamala Harris in deep trouble with black men. And I really want to know why that was the case. What was the basis of this article that was being written? Who were some of the people that were speaking in the article? I know that polling has been done, and in a lot of the national polls, I think there is some concern about Vice President Harris's support within the black community, but particularly with black men. I knew that was concerning. Well, here's some of the pieces that I got out of this Newsweek article as I started reading the article. And the first thing that struck me was that 79% of black women over 50 were going to vote for Kamala Harris. I was not surprised by that. That was a number that a little lower, really, than I thought. I really thought that would be in the higher 80s, lower 90s for black women supporting Vice President Harris in this year's election. The second thing in the article that struck me as we first got started, in reading this story in Newsweek was that number had dropped among black men of all ages. Only 66% of black men over 50 would vote for Kamala Harris, Vice President Harris. So it was 79% black women, but it's only 66% of black men over 50. So that's my age, over 50. So my age over 50, 66% of us are going to vote for Vice President Harris. When it came to black men in this country between the ages of 18 and 49, which is the voting age under 50, that number had dropped even more to only about 56% of black males were going to vote for or support Vice President Harris. So you begin to look at these numbers. That is a dramatic increase. It is a 10% percentage decrease between black males over 40, over 50, compared to black males under 50. So it was 66% of black males over 50 that supported Kamala Harris, the vice president. But when it came to 49 and under, voting age down to age 18, that support was only 56%. That was a dramatic decline from the 79% of black women over 50 that was going to vote for the vice president. Well, I began to wonder, then what is driving those numbers? What is the issues that are driving the numbers that we're seeing now, an erosion of support for a woman whose father was Jamaican and is considered a black female or someone who's mixed, compared to men. If 79% of black women are going to support Vice President Harris, but only 50% of black males under 50 years old, what's going on here? What's driving that? What's some of the issues? Was it some of the things that I have been saying and expressing for years now as a concern? So why are black men disenchanted? And I've started reading the Newsweek story as to why black men were disenchanted. particularly black men who were under 50 years old. The number one issue was that black male voters feel neglected by the party, really the Democratic Party. They feel like that the black vote has been taken for granted for decades by the Democratic Party. So that was a major piece there. And it was consistent with what I have been saying, is that I felt like that many of the policies and the issues that the Democratic Party now is pursuing tends to be much more to the left, and we'll get into that a little more. But it was not really focusing on what the concerns and needs were within the black community. But when it came to election time, there was a major focus to get out the black vote, that particularly in urban cities where Democrats try to run up the score, they go to the black community to try to get 90+% of the black vote in urban areas. But younger black men are different from their fathers and their grandfathers. Their grandfathers and their fathers were going to vote Democrat. Regardless of who the candidate was, regardless of what the issues were, their fathers and grandfathers were going to be loyal to the party and vote based on what black people traditionally have been voting for decades now, probably going all the way back to President Lyndon Johnson, been heavily voting Democrat. Well, our sons and our grandsons don't look at it in the same way as their fathers and their grandfathers do. They're more focused on results, and they are questioning whether or not black people are getting the kind of results that they should be getting based on the loyalty of the black community in voting for them. Are the needs of black America being met? And particularly, I think men are making a distinction between the needs of black men and also the needs of black women and the black family. And I think in particularly, black men are feeling left behind when it comes to the policies that are being proposed, are being basically pursued. And as we get into what the article is saying, is that many black men feel like they are being left behind and their needs are not being addressed. So that really caught my attention, because I have been concerned about that too as a black male who was over 50 years old. So I am the father of many of these young men who are now leaving the Democratic Party and have their concerns. The second thing that caught my attention in this article is that black men are increasingly becoming disillusioned and frustrated with the party because there's really no evidence what these black men feel like that their vote is being respected anymore. You're getting our vote, but is our vote really being respected? And it really gets into number three, the social front of the Democratic Party is out of step with the black community with its far left agenda, which is more in line with the faculty lounge, and I like this part, than the barbershop. So what is the conversation in the barbershop compared to what the conversation that black men would have in the faculty lounge? And I think there is a distinction there between black elite and particularly black educated young men who may be middle class or low income. And I think that's where the disconnect is existing within the community. Well, what are those needs that black men feel like are being neglected, who may be younger, under 50, who may be both middle income or striving to be middle income, and then those who would be considered lower income compared to some of the black elite in our community who have a particular agenda, and some of that far left agenda is more consistent with their belief system than I would say those of younger black males in this country who see their plight as being much more difficult, and they see their struggle even today to be able to advance and also make it in our society today. Those were some of the issues. The fourth piece was some black men are responding very favorably, and this is what I was surprised by this, and I'm not surprised, more favorably to former President Trump because they believe their lives were better when he was in office. So a lot of black men, particularly in the barbershop talk, felt like that 4 years ago they had more money in their pocket, that their lives were better than what it is today. And if there are factors that has changed their circumstance, then I really don't think the Democratic Party has done a good job of articulating that. Because as we see inflation rising, as we see the high cost of groceries and car insurance, and you just name it, black men feel like that as wages are stagnant, they see inflation eating into their stagnant wages, so that they have less money and that there is a greater struggle for them to make it based on the economy and based on inflation today. They're looking right now, with a few weeks left in the election, for both candidates to really specify and get more specific on their policies that would improve the lives of black men. And they feel like, particularly with Kamala Harris, and I think this is where the disconnect is, certainly she's done a real good job of articulating the issue, particularly of women and black women who are very concerned about their bodies and having the freedom and the right to choose what they are going to do with their bodies when it comes to the issue of abortion. She's done a good job there, but that's not the issue for black men. That is not their issue. Black men are not interested in the whole issue of abortion. They are expressing some economic concerns when it comes to stagnation, when it comes to their wages, and also the increasing cost of living. And this is an issue for them. They're also concerned, black men, with the whole issue of immigration. We started seeing this play out really in cities like Chicago and New York City when black residents were really, frustrated with the immigration policies of this administration and how all of these immigrants were coming into black communities. Well, in the Newsweek story that I read, one of the issues that black men were talking about when it came to what they considered illegal immigration was it was causing the loss of jobs in the black community. So black men are feeling like they're being impacted by this illegal immigration, and it's impacting jobs within the black community. And younger black men believe that Harris is more, focused on legitimizing the immigrant communities over the black community. And I found that interesting that black men, young black men, felt like that there was a greater focus on legitimizing immigrant communities over the black community, that resources are being poured into the immigrant community that are not being poured into the black community. So blacks now see themselves, particularly black men, as being impacted in a negative way, and they're being pushed, to the bottom of the pole. And then the third thing that really fascinated me in an article when I read this about why black men were kind of moving away from the vice president was her record as a prosecutor in California when she was the attorney general. And many young black men believe that she contributed to mass incarceration. The black community is 13% of the American population, but we're plus 30% of the prison population, so that the policies that they felt like Vice President Harris had when she was the Attorney General of California disproportionately impacted black America, and particularly black men. And I found that fascinating that black men are paying attention to that, because one of the big issues within the black community is the disproportionate impact of the judicial system, particularly on black men, and the inequities and injustices that exist in the system that seems to prosecute and imprison at a greater rate black men compared to all other races. And they felt like that issue is not being highlighted and lifted up enough. And there was distrust with Vice President Harris over that issue because of her past record as Attorney General in the state of California, and that her record for many contributed to the mass incarceration of black Americans in the state of California, and what ultimately impacted black men nationally. The fourth piece in the Newsweek article that black men stated was Vice President Harris is flip-flopping on issues which for them was a red flag, because it kind of goes back to the other issue of Harris's record as a prosecutor. Could she be trusted? Could she be trusted in what she is saying? And there was an issue of whether or not she was truly being honest, or that she could be believed in what she is saying today. So there was concern about flip-flopping without an explanation of why her position has changed on some of the key issues that for many black men that they're focused on. So when it comes to the issue of the economy, when it comes to stagnant wages, the lack of advancement, the issue of inflation, the issue, in the community of migration, illegal immigration and its impact on communities of color, particularly the black community, those were issues that for many black men they're having concerns about, and it is why you are seeing this shift among black men who are under the age of 50 years old, either moving toward former President Trump or some alternative. And some say they may not even vote in this election because they're so disenchanted by what they're seeing going on. I think this is the issue that we really have to focus on, and I think it is an issue that I have been saying that Democrats cannot continue to ignore. There are concerns in the black community about the shift of the party to the far left, and some of those issues that are being highlighted by the Democratic Party that black men feel like that they are being ignored. And if you don't address that issue, if you don't address their anxiety, their worry, their frustration, their concerns about their situation, then I think this is going to be an issue for decades to come. Younger black men under 50 don't have the same kind of loyalties to the Democratic Party as their fathers and grandfathers, their mothers and their grandmothers have. They don't. And if the party does not begin to address their concerns, there is a chance you can start losing generations and generations of young black men. And I would say this, if you start losing young black men, ultimately it's going to start having an impact on younger black women, because the men are going to begin to influence even their wives and their daughters in how they perceive these political parties, and the fact that they feel like that the black agenda that the concerns of the black community, particularly of black men, are no longer being addressed in our political elections anymore. There are a lot of things that are being promised. There's a lot of vagueness in what these candidates are going to do, though I think former President Trump, for some black men, seems to be addressing some of those issues. And last night I watched former President Obama campaign in Pittsburgh, and I think President Obama recognizes the concern. I think it's the reason why that President Obama now is on the campaign trail. He understands that there is a problem. NASA, we have a problem. He understands that there is a problem. And if the Democratic Party continues to ignore the concerns of black males, this problem is going to get even worse. I don't know if they have time enough in the next 3 or 4 weeks to turn this around. If they don't turn it around, it's going to be a very difficult election night. I don't think that we can afford to lose that larger percentage that we're now seeing of young black male voters. You're certainly starting to lose some of the younger female black voters under 50 also. Their numbers are not as high as black males yet. But if you don't address it, it's going to become that high. And it is an issue. If you're going to address other social issues that are important to the Democratic Party, then you have to begin to address the concerns that black men are expressing that meets their needs. Why should they continue to vote and they feel like their concerns are not being addressed? So Dems, if you're not going to address their concerns, you're going to lose their vote. Understand they're also very religious. So some feel like that their Christian religious values are being challenged. You cannot ignore that. The black community in America, since going back to slavery, have been very church-centric, particularly in the Christian community, though we have a larger number of black males that are becoming Muslims, but they all have very, what I would say, traditional, strict religious values. Those issues are also important. So you're dealing with the issue of the economy, stagnant wages. You're dealing with the issue of inflation. And if you make less money and stuff is costing more, then you struggle to buy groceries, you struggle to make house payments, you struggle with car insurance, you struggle now with the high interest rates with buying cars and higher car payments to get your car fixed. Everything you can think of is higher. So the concern is that if you don't deal with inflation and the high cost of it, it's disproportionately impacting the black community. And black men are feeling the sting of that. If black men feel like because of illegal immigration that jobs are being taken, that resources are being taken out of the community, then that is a concern to them. How do we address their concerns, their needs? If they feel like they cannot get the loans and the resources to start businesses, or that they're losing their job because of illegal immigration, then how is that addressed? How do you address their concerns? It is a real concern. Whether you think it is, whether it's true or not, it is the concern. It is perception. Perception becomes reality. It is somebody's reality. And if it's not addressed, then it's their reality, and they're going to vote based on their perception of their reality. And their perception is they're being left behind, that they're having a hard time surviving because the economy is not good for them. They're struggling in dealing with the whole issue of inflation, and they see illegal migration as an issue in our community. The other issue I think Vice President Harris has to deal with. It is her position on when it comes to the whole issue of the judicial system in this country. Because you do have a record. And because you have a record, you now have to deal with your record to build the trust back in the black community as to how you are going to address the judicial system in this country. Because your record in California was a record that concerned many black Americans. You cannot not talk about it and say, well, I'm concerned about it, I'm going to address it. Well, how are you going to address it? What are your policies? You cannot continue to be vague on that, because the concern now is that you are flip-flopping on all these other issues, so no one really knows what you really believe because you haven't explained to people why you have a change of heart. And if you're not explaining why you have a change of heart, why your position has changed, then it's hard for people to trust you on that issue. So black Americans are saying, you have been vice president now for 3 years and 4 months, and their concern is, why hasn't these issues been addressed? I think the Newsweek article was right on target. I think that story was right on target. It's what I've been saying. It's what I hear. I'm a pastor. I have young men in my church. I'm involved in a faith-based organization that is out in the street dealing with young men of color almost daily. I know what I'm hearing. I know what I see on social media. I know what I'm reading. I was not surprised at the Newsweek story. I think this is real. And I think the Democratic Party has to address this. You cannot ignore your most loyal voters. You cannot ignore their concerns. Maybe the problem is you're trying to be all things to all people. But yet in trying to do that, you are ignoring concerns of the group of Americans that's been most loyal to you since the 1960s. You can always count on the black vote. And the black vote has gotten presidents elected, has gotten senators elected, has gotten congressmen and women elected, has elected governors, has elected mayors, has elected council members, state representatives because of the black vote. Now, if you want to hold on to the black vote, then you have to address the issues that the black community are saying that's important to us. How are you going to bring inflation down? How are you going to address the issue of stagnant wages? How are you going to address the concerns of the black community and black males that feel like illegal immigration is impacting the community and taking jobs away and resources away out of the community? I think you need to address that, Vice President Harris. I think you got 4 weeks to address that issue. Obama cannot do it for you. They need to hear from you. How are you going to do that? If they don't hear from you, then they're not going to vote for you, and you're going to see more and more young black men and men in general support former President Trump or not vote at all in the presidential election. That's where they are. Democrats stop taking the black vote for granted, particularly the black man's vote for granted. You're going to lose it. You better address our issues and understand where young black men are coming from. I'm an older black man. I'm more likely to be more sympathetic, but I've been telling you for years now this was coming, and now it's here. And if you don't address it, you're going to have a difficult night on November 5th. If you don't address it, you're going to begin to lose more and more in years to come. They're not going to just vote for you. They're not. My sons and grandsons are not going to just vote for you. If you don't meet their needs, they're going to take their vote someplace else. And demonizing another candidate is not going to get their vote. They're not stupid. They're not blind. They see what they see, and they know their reality. You got to speak to their issue and not try to scare people to vote for you, because they are not. They're either going to sit at home or they're going to vote for someone else. President Obama cannot save you. Hear me. President Obama cannot save you. Democratic Party, President Obama cannot save you. You got to speak to what young black men under 50 are saying. I'm telling you, the younger women are going to follow them if you're not careful. It may not all show up in this election, but in future elections, you're going to see more and more younger black men and women under 50 move away from the Democratic Party. That's the truth. You can see it in the polling. You got 4 weeks to try to address that issue. And you have to do it, Vice President Harris. Democratic Party, you got to step up your game. Because former President Trump is coming after them. And he's not afraid to talk about the issues that concern them. And what they're saying, hear me, you don't have to agree, but I'm telling you the truth, that things were better under former President Trump, and they had more money in their pockets than they do now. This is real. This is the reality. This has been something that we should have been talking about for years. I'm telling you now, I'm not afraid to tell the truth. I'm not afraid to say what's really going on. That's what's really going on. I know some of you may be upset that I'm saying this. I don't care. I'm concerned about black America. I'm concerned about what's going on in the black community. And if you want my vote, if you want the vote of these men, then address our concerns, speak to our concerns, so that we can improve the quality of life for black Americans in cities all across the country, like other races are asking you to do. They're not giving you their vote without you speaking to their issues. So if you're going to speak to their issues because you want their vote, then speak to our issues because you want their vote. We're telling you what our issues are. And there are a lot of issues that are similar to people regardless of what their race is. But we're disproportionately being impacted. We have concerns about the economy. We have concerns about crime and violence. We have concerns about stagnant wages. We have concerns about inflation and the high cost of living today with less money, which means you have less money to spend. You got to speak to us and stop speaking in generalities. We need to hear policies. We need to hear how to. How am I going to do this? How am I going to address your concerns? We need to hear you tell us. Because I'm telling you, if you don't speak to these young men under 50, they're not coming to the polls in this election to save you. This is Rev Harrison on Real Talk. I hope you've been blessed by my conversation and dialogue with you today. I try to deal with the issues that are affecting our communities here in Indianapolis and all across the country. And I'm going to ask that for those of you who are watching this, I'm going to ask that you retweet this out there so people can hear. Because we got to have real conversations. Sisters, let's have real conversations. Because we need to talk. It's not just about supporting someone in our race. It's about addressing the concerns that we face as a people, and particularly men of color. Thank you so much for joining me today on Real Talk. And this is Rev Charles Harrison, and I pray that you have a blessed and an awesome day. Join me again next time as I come on Real Talk next week. Subscribe to my podcast and share it on X and Facebook and other social media posts. This is Rev Harrison. Have a blessed and awesome day. Peace.
This is Real Talk with Reverend Charles Harrison.
Be sure to like and subscribe to this podcast.
And be sure to check out other great podcasts on the All Indiana Podcast Network.
Online now at allindianapodcast.com.